Mabuhay!
Hi! Welcome to
The Babaylan Bruha Book Club podcast.
It's Your Village Kapwatids, Steph.
And Aimee, and here we are together again. And as always, in efforts to decolonize our minds, bodies, and reconnect with spirit by ways of relation via conversation, of education, interpretation, and integration.
So, this is our invitation for you to join us on our journeys as we discuss the works of honored artists, authors, and thought leaders in the Filipinx diaspora.
Quick disclaimer, we want to acknowledge that in this moment, everyone is exactly where they need to be.
And since we are not experts, yet we share our own unique lived experiences, we invite you to take or toss any statements, opinions, words that we may use as you choose.
We are so glad you found your way here. Okay, so as always, before we begin, we want to take a moment to ground, taking a pause to drop into our bodies and become fully present to the space and time. If it is safe for you, we invite you to close your eyes, straighten your spine, and direct your focus to your breath. If you can't close your eyes at this moment, we just invite you to notice what is around you and also focus on your breath. So let's take a few deep inhales, extending your belly out, and exhales, bringing your belly in. One more time, inhale, extending your belly out, and exhale, bringing your belly in. One more time, inhale, and exhale. Invite you to continue to breathe deeply and on your own time. Invite you to connect back into your body, drop into your body, drop into this moment. Let everything go that has happened before and whatever is going to happen later. And just come into this moment. Can you allow yourself to feel what it's like to be in the here and now? And as we begin our conversation, as always, we'd like to thank God, Bathala Creator, for another gathering. In gratitude, we acknowledge our benevolent ancestors and our guides and our higher selves, and invite all these forces to guide and protect this conversation today. We also thank the ancestors of the lands that Stephanie and I currently occupy, knowing we cannot do our own remembrance without remembering them. For myself, that is the mound builders that are the Hopewell and Adena people here in Ohio. And for Stephanie, that is the Bay, Miwok, Yokut people in the Inland Bay Area of California. With gratitude, we also acknowledge your presence, Kapwatid, your energy and your light, no matter wherever and whenever you're tuning in.
All right, y'all. So it's Bruha Tings time. We do 90 minutes because patriarchy and capitalism. So we're just checking in. What are some Bruha Tings you've done this week? Things you're working on. And I guess I will go first, sis, right?
Yes. And let's go.
So, you know what? I think a Bruha Ting is just really recognizing and remembering that prayer is a Bruha Ting. So keep it simple. I don't know. I was like painting my nails and I was like thinking about how grateful I am. And I was like, I just wanted to say a prayer. And I think while in this decolonizing process, church trained me to pray. It's still something that people do no matter what class, creed, religious, spiritual belief you have. And then in addition, today is Lunar New Year. And I wanted to just say an acknowledgement and a prayer too for the Monterey Park victims. There was a shooting, I think it was yesterday, this morning, and they're predominantly Asian AAPI community. And so, yeah, that's just a prayer ting I want to offer up for a Bruha Ting moment for those folks. We don't know right now if it was a hate crime, but feels like it. So, and regardless, my point is, sometimes less is more, simplicity is everything. And I just wonder, are y'all's praying? How many times do you pray per week, per day? Yeah, I encourage you to keep up the Bruha Ting of prayer. It's a nice way to connect to Batala, divine God. So.
Perfect. You ended right on time.
Oh.
Capitalism would be so proud of you right now.
It's that call center life. Thank you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. And go.
Okay, so my Bruha Ting that I have been really intentional about the past few couple weeks is just really calling my energy back, and just really coming back into myself. I think I said in the last episode that December kind of knocked me on my ass. And so I'm finally feeling like a little bit more stable. And so I've just been able to, because when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to do a ritual. It's hard to pray. The only prayer you can have is like your breath. The only ritual you can have is like surviving every day, right? So, but now that I feel a little bit on my feet, I've been like calling my energy back, been sending any energy that doesn't belong to me back to love, in love, and just saying those words. And like I do a little thing with my kali sticks when I do it. So it just feels I feel like I'm finally starting to come back like to myself, and I think that just that's the bruja thing, right? To be empowered is to be within yourself. So that's what I've been doing lately. I don't know. Is that time? Am I early?
Yeah, right on Bruja, divine timing too.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, y'all's Bruja Tings. How's it going? What is your practice? If you feel called, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And just so thank you for all the likes and all your comments. I know we see your comments in the YouTubes. But sometimes Steph and I, we see them, we appreciate them. We might not be able to reply right away just because life and school and all that stuff, kids. So, but we just appreciate you being there.
Yeah,
So.
just know we're regular ass people and we don't have it. We see you, we hear you, we thank you. And yeah, we're regular ass people and we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, but there's some regulars. We see you. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get into chapter 10 of our book, 1521. This chapter is called The Betrayal. Dun, dun, dun. So this chapter speaks of betrayal on betrayal on betrayal. Oh, the ways man betrays man, especially since at this time we are unaware if there were any female passengers on the ships and or mentioned in the islands that had to do with any betrayal. So now we know Magellan was killed at the Battle of Mactan by the hand of Cilapulapu. So who's running the ships and the crew now, right? So what happened to them?
Oh, so according to Pigafetta, the men, Pigafetta is again our historian, our most I think referenced one because there's many. The men elected 2 commanders, Magellan's Portuguese, and there's a lot of country rivalry between Portugal and Spain, by the way. So his Magellan's Portuguese brother-in-law and Duarte Barbosa, and debatably if a true Spaniard, Joao Serrao, Joaoserrao.
Yeah.
So both men had ties to Magellan, and we read that even if they did not like Magellan, both men respected him. Which leads us to our second point of noting that Magellan was widely actually disliked by his own people, which has been debatable if his demise was caused by not being liked or supported by his crew members. Because he circumnavigated the globe. He probably got on people's nerves.
He had haters.
He had haters. So there's an example we'll talk about shortly after Judy brings up Enrique, the translator slave that Magellan had captured years ago. Where was he during the battle? And where and when did he meet his own demise as well? Either way, the narrative continues to portray how, upon post-Magellan's death, both commanders accepted an invitation for Raja Humaban to come to shore to retrieve jewels for the King of Spain and dine with them. I don't know why they fell for that, but they and 28 other men were ambushed, and Pigafetta was injured. Serrao was captured along with a priest, and the islanders ransomed Serrao for, quote, the big iron gun, which is what they feared the most. Europeans and their, cannons or whatever, or guns. And they increased demands so much that the ship eventually was like, you can keep him. Like, they kept asking for more and more and more. So Serrao, we don't know what happened to him. But again, post-Magellan and this ambush, the historical dance of he said, she said continues. Some people blame Enrique for the ambush and accused him of conspiring with the islanders. We'll talk about that in just a bit. And the remaining ships sailed from Cebu and attempted to navigate their way around the archipelago to the Spice Islands. And along the way, they attacked and conquered islander ships in a pure piracy fashion. So they became pirates. And only to get to the Spice Islands, this is the karma, and find that it had been claimed by Portugal already.
What?
Yeah.
All that. And it was already claimed by Portugal. And Ati Judy mentions too that maybe that's why, because Magellan is a Portuguese man who sailed for Spain, right? So, but he went to Portugal, his own country, and was like, can I go to the Spice Islands? And they were like, no. So this is like, maybe they didn't want him to go because they actually already were in the Spice Islands and didn't want to let anybody know, right? So that they could keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
Let's
get into it, sis.
Let's get into it. Okay, so let's just jump into this chapter. As always, we do 2 vocabulary words and then 2 quotes, and we just kind of talk about them and just go from there. Okay, so I'm going to start first, and I'm going to reference something from the Brown Girl Cliff Notes, which was the iron gun, right? So I don't know how to say his name. Serrao. Why do I want to be like Serrao?
They were Serra in the head.
Yeah. Oh, sige.
Serra means like messed up in the head.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Siraolo.
Siratang ulo mo.
Yeah.
Because I heard that shit growing up. Anyway.
For real. So Serrao was brought to the shore by the islanders for ransom, Bergreen wrote, and they asked for an quote unquote iron gun, which is what they fear the most. And this was given to them. And I don't know, I just thought it was an interesting, I don't know, I just thought that point was interesting because the Spaniards came in, Magellan came in, and that was like their form of power, right? That was the one thing that the islanders didn't have. And they made sure that they shot their cannons before and after they left, right? And so I don't know, it's just kind of like, okay, it's more of that power play, right? So I want to have what you have because it seems powerful, right? So I'm gonna hold your people until you give that to me. But I did think it was funny how, like you said, they kept asking for more and more, and then Serrao, that finally they were just like, you can just go ahead and keep them. But Serrao was wanting them to rescue him. They were like, he was like, don't leave me here. Don't leave me here. But they were like, why? So Pigafetta did write about that they departed quickly, and I know not whether Joao Serrao be remained be alive or dead. So just a lot of violence, sissy. Just like a lot of power, a lot of violence, a lot of like, that's kind of messed up that they left him, honestly. But I mean, I guess I don't know. It's all just, it's just sad. What makes me wonder is how the matriarchy would uh handle this situation.
Okay.
That's
Much
all.
more compromise.
Yeah.
The word compromise comes up.
Yeah, I feel like there would be less violence, I think. So,
Yeah, and imagine if like the queen, there was a queen on board and that was her son.
yeah,
Hell no, you know.
yeah,
Either way, yeah, power play, like give us your gun, like
yeah.
that make, you know. Anyway,
So
keep
that's what I got. I am complete.
all right. So my word is on page 158 to 159. They talked about uh being barefoot. So this is another kind of portrayal piece of the bigger picture. And I think it is like a clue as to why the crew was mad at at Magellan, like, because I'm like, Magellan's meeting all these people and feasting. Why is his crew like, basically it says on 158 what happened to their shoes? And it was first mentioned that Pigafetta made of the men being shoeless. The long crossing of the Pacific Ocean, food was scarce, and the crew was said to have boiled and eaten leather parts of their equipment. And could it be that all the incidents so far, all the feasts, negotiations, and battles were performed barefoot? So I don't know. It's just really interesting. I was like, you'd think that Europeans would be all clothed and armored and, have shoes. But I never thought that like they would boil leather and eat it. That's gross. So anyways,
Yeah.
I just bring that up as like another kind of detail to add to whoever's going to make this a movie one day.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what like desperate times, like if you're traveling to unknown parts of the world. But then I had like, so you're traveling to unknown parts of the world, right? And then you don't know where your next meal is going to be, if you're going to even make it. So I get boiling your shoes, I guess, and eating them. But that is kind of weird and gross. But then I had this picture of all of the Spaniards with like their armor on. Like they have the armor and they had the metal armor and like, but then they had no shoes. Then they're like barefoot.
I
Like,
know. Like, it's like I don't want to body shame anybody, but like, they got like buff and then you look at their legs and they miss leg day. Like, what happened there?
yeah.
So
And also they probably weren't used to going barefoot. Like we probably were, our ancestors were probably barefoot and we were used to it. So I'm wondering too if that had something to do. There's so many things, there's so many details that are interesting that may have added to why they lost the Battle of Mactan. If they weren't wearing shoes.
right. And they're not used to the sand, the elements. It's probably why
Mhm.
they like, personified it in storytelling because not used to all those. Running in sand is hard, okay?
And then with armor on, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, more depiction for y'all's. That's all. I'm complete.
Thank you, sis. Okay, so we're back with some quotes. I will go first, and I want to talk about Enrique. So we talked about him in the first chat, in the beginning of the book, and we like him. We like Enrique, but we don't really hear too much about him afterwards. So it is very interesting because Pigafetta said that after Magellan was killed, right? Enrique was slightly wounded during the battle. But he no longer went ashore to do our necessary business because he was always wrapped in a blanket. And Ate Judy hypothesizes that it sounded like Enrique may have been mourning Magellan's death, and that actually in his will, Magellan left 10,000 maravedis. I don't know what that money. He left him some money to Enrique and also his foster son, which seems like an highly unusual for an enslaved companion to receive an inheritance from their master. So I wonder if this meant Magellan had thought of Enrique as kind of a son. More importantly, Magellan had also declared in his will that from the day of his death, Enrique would be freed and released from slavery. But the two commanders the two men who took over after Magellan were like, no, you're not going to be free. We still need you to run interference between us and the Filipinos. So that's why you remember the Serrao and some 28 other men and a priest got ambushed. So people are wondering if Enrique conspired with the Filipinos to ambush the Spaniards, maybe to get back at them, right? Because he wanted to be free, like Magellan said, and he lost maybe a father figure because it said he was 13. Enrique was 13 when Magellan got him. So if you think about it, he grew up with Magellan, probably, even though that he was technically a slave. What is that called? Stockholm syndrome? Maybe there was some Stockholm syndrome happening, but he might have looked at him as like a father figure and was like grateful to him. So who knows? But on 157, which is where my quote it comes in, like maybe Enrique did conspire with the islanders, maybe he did not. Bergreen acknowledged Enrique's motives were probably complex. This reminded me of how history is sometimes seen in broad strokes, but these individual stories are much more complex than we think. And I just like, I think that's what we've been saying this whole time, right? It's like there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of complexity here. It's not just cut and dried. It's not just like Lapu-Lapu killed Magellan, end of story. Like there's a lot more to it. And I don't know, like just to think about everybody else involved. And like, if this were a movie, right? Because we keep talking about like maybe this is a movie one day, like the Enrique character. Like if you think about it, like he was probably on top of the world. He was like, he was a slave, but all of a sudden he's super important. He's running interference between Magellan and the Filipinos, right? Because he knew the language. So he's super important, right? And then all of a sudden the person who gave him his importance dies. And then I would probably ambush those people too, honestly, who said I wasn't allowed to have my freedom.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything.
So,
sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, everything you said is right. I agree. Because it isn't cut and dry. And, I don't even know how old, like he got him when he was 13, but how old is Enrique? So that's another thing to think about, like how long. And then he left him money and there's bond there. He's a human at the end of the day. And so I probably thought of Enrique as his son. So another son. And I wanted to save it for my quotes, but I feel like this is how people act out when grief happens. They can do a bunch of things that would not be centered, right? So if Enrique did conspire, like I guess it's a both and, like probably not the best thing, and it's understandable. Like
and if there was already mutiny, like quiet mutiny on the ship, right? Maybe Enrique saw that and maybe he wanted his like that's what I'm saying, like we were really interested
that's all I gotta say. He's probably like, I'm out, what I
I think the movie should be about Enrique, actually.
Ooh.
Yeah, maybe he's on the island. Maybe he finds like, maybe he finds a partner, settled down,
Girl,
has
he's
a
kind
little
of
farm.
like, I'm gonna conspire and then I'll come back for you.
Yeah.
Tell me I have to go because it's actually in the book says that he's supposed to go back and tend to Magellan's wife because he's
Yeah.
not technically free. But he was like, fuck that. Like if he had a love interest
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it wasn't a female, plot twist.
Oh, yeah, see? Oh, let's write Enrique's story. That's who I'm in.
Okay, let's do it. I'll be writing right now as soon as we stop recording.
Right. All right, sis, that I am complete. So if
Okay.
you want to talk about your quote, since it, like you said, it directly relates to maybe.
Yeah, so mine is at towards the end, y'all. It's on page 161, and we're referencing back to Bergerine, who's kind of like the secondary historian that Judy brings in a lot. On November 6, 1521, right? They, meaning that the ships, right? The ship of the crewmen, they saw 4 more islands shimmering in the horizon, and this is when they reached the Spice Islands. So this is the whole like kind of like anticlimactic end piece. Like that's what Magellan wanted to get to. The islands of Molucca, where the Spice Islands are, and there was actually if you kind of want to read that chapter, they capture a bunch of ships, right? Like islanders with coconuts, they take it over, they capture people, and some pleading for their life for like, we'll show you where you want to go, right? So they finally get there, and then with the help of a Filipino pilot who lent his local expertise to help them navigate the shallow and sometimes dangerous waters of the region. So Pigafetta actually says when they discharged their artillery, they were joyful. And then a week after they arrived, they met an armada of Portuguese explorers. It had been 10 years since the Moluccas had actually been discovered by Portugal. So it's kind of like another dun 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 about 1521. I just wanted to point that out. Like, it's the whole reason off the Judy Ryan is like 500 years of discovery. And for them to get to where they wanted to go and then to be like, womp, 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 kind of moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out. And I think it's in some ways it's karmic. And this is what happens when, people don't know how to manage grief. So they just pillage and kill. So we want to point that out too. They pillaged a bunch of ships. They conquered and pillaged. They were being pirates. And then they get to this space and it's like, nope, it's not. Technically, it's not anybody's, but yeah.
Yeah, but the Portuguese were like, we were here. We're already here.
Right.
For like 10 years.
And remember, Spaniards and Portuguese people are like rivals for whatever reason. It's another history, a timeline we won't dive in today, but
I will say it is interesting that the Portuguese were there at the Spice Islands for 10 years, but didn't like feel the need to like take over. Do you know what I mean? Like they didn't, like we were who were we colonized by? The Portuguese or the Spanish? We were colonized by the Spanish and not the Portuguese.
That would be an interesting thing to dive into more. Like, are the Portuguese like more peaceful? I don't know. We're what do you call that? Observing from right now.
Yeah, we're just
they pillage, or they're probably like, we claim this place. We don't need to. We just go live here and enjoy. Like, we don't need to go back and make documents and
So anyway, very interesting. History is very nuanced. There's a lot of complexities. So it's been very interesting to learn all of this.
So, as we end our conversation and close out this container with gratitude, we recognize and honor all our ancestors and the ancestors of the lands we occupy. We also recognize and honor you, dear Kapwatid, for joining our conversation today. And as always, your Ates leave you with a blessing. As you continue on this journey of remembrance, may you know that the truth of your ancestors lies in the sacred both and so does the truth of this decolonizing work. While it is both frustrating to forget, it is also liberating to remember. You have been called to this sacred work, and while you may find grief, may you also know that you will find joy. May the remembrance of Kapwa anchor you into your heart, and until we meet again, may you know that all is well and will be well, and that no matter what happens, you are loved.